I was deep into kneading dough when my mother entered the kitchen, wearing that familiar look, the one that meant another conversation with Dad about my future was coming. "Anna," she began, wringing her hands in her apron, "your father and I have been discussing something." I kept kneading, letting the rhythmic motion calm me. Sunlight poured through the cafe's windows, glinting off the copper fixtures I'd personally chosen during the renovation. Every inch of Sweet Dreams Bakery and Cafe reflected my work, down to the vintage wallpaper and carefully selected menu of handcrafted breads and pastries. "Let me guess," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about James taking over." Her face lit up, relieved I guessed correctly. "Yes. After he lost his job at the investment firm, your father thinks this would be perfect for him. He has an MBA after all." I let out a humorless laugh. "Mom, James doesn't know the first thing about running a bakery. He's never worked in food service. He can't even cook for himself. But he understands business," she insisted. "Management, numbers, those things you struggle with." I stopped kneading and faced her directly. "Struggle with, Mom? I've been profitable every month since we opened. I paid back the startup loan in half the time. Our cafe has a waiting list for custom orders." But I could see it wasn't registering. I'd always be the impulsive daughter who dropped out of business school to follow my passion. Meanwhile, James would always be the golden child, even after his risky trades led to him losing his job. "Your father already spoke with James," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "He's really excited about the opportunity. Think about it, Anna. You could focus on the baking and let James handle the business side." I wiped my hands on my apron, leaving flour marks. "This is my business, Mom. I built it from the ground up. Dad may have co-signed the loan, but I turned this place into what it is today." She placed her hand on my arm, her tone patronizing. "Honey, we just want what's best for everyone. James needs this. He has a family to support. And I don't matter." I whispered. "My dreams don't count because I'm single. Because I'm a woman." "Don't be dramatic," she said. "Your father's already drawn up the papers. James is taking over as managing director next month." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. "Dad can't do that," I protested. But even as I said the words, I remembered the fine print on the loan documents. My father's co-signature had come with conditions, ones I foolishly agreed to, never thinking he used them against me. That evening after closing, my father and James arrived at the cafe. I sat across from them in a booth I personally repainted, listening as they laid out their plan for my dream. "We'll streamline things," James said, swiping through something on his tablet. "Cut the specialty items, focus on a wider audience. No more of this artisanal stuff." "That artisanal stuff is what brought in our customers," I pointed out. James rolled his eyes. "The customers will adjust. We need to think bigger, Anna. Expanding, franchising, not this small-time stuff." Dad nodded approvingly. "James has some great ideas for modernization. It's time this place grew up, became a real business." I looked around at my cafe, the hand-painted signs, the wall of customer photos, the display case filled with carefully crafted pastries. Everything that made this place mine was about to be erased for James' corporate vision. "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dad's face hardened. "Then I'll call in the loan. You won't be able to buy me out." He was right. I had reinvested every penny back into the business, upgrading equipment, training staff, building something sustainable. I didn't have the cash reserves to buy him out. James leaned back, a familiar smirk on his face. "Don't be difficult, Anna. This is for the best. You can keep baking your little treats. Leave the real business to someone who knows how it works." I stood slowly, pulled my keys from my pocket. The keychain was a small copper whisk, a gift from my first employee on opening day. I set it on the table with a soft clink. "Go ahead," I said, my voice calm. "Take it. Since you're the man of the family, you must know better than me." James grabbed the keys without hesitation. Dad started to speak, saying I was being sensible, but I was already walking away. I pushed through the kitchen doors one last time, running my hand over the industrial mixer I'd saved up for. Then I grabbed my bag from the office and walked out the back door. They didn't know about the photos I'd been taking, documenting every part of the cafe's operations. They didn't know about the copies I'd made of our recipes, contracts, and customer records. And they definitely didn't know about the new business plan I'd been quietly drafting since James started hinting at helping with the cafe. Growing up with James taught me one thing. When he wanted something, he usually got it, and then he usually ruined it. So I prepared for this moment, gathering everything I'd need to start over when the inevitable happened. As I drove home that night, I didn't cry. Instead, I started counting the days until James proved why this was such a terrible idea. It didn't take long. The changes started immediately. James wasted no time implementing his vision for Sweet Dreams. First, he fired Maria, my head pastry chef who had been with me from the start. Too expensive, he said. Then he replaced our high-quality ingredients with cheaper alternatives and cut our signature items to make room for mass-produced pastries. I watched it all from a distance, getting updates from Lucy, one of the baristas who still kept in touch. The artisan bread program I'd built, replaced with par-baked frozen loaves. The vintage decor, torn out for generic, modern fixtures. The loyal customers who had supported us from the beginning slowly stopped coming as the quality dropped and prices climbed. He's put TV screens everywhere, Lucy texted one day, running ads on a loop. It looks like a fast food joint now. I didn't reply right away, but I saved the message with the others. Each one was a new piece of evidence, meticulously filed away, knowing it would be needed soon. 3 months after James took control, my mother called me. The numbers are starting to worry us, she said, her voice uncertain. James claims it's just a phase, but your father's concerned. Would you be willing to come back and help smooth things over? No, I answered firmly, hanging up the phone. Instead, I focused on my next move. I'd secured a job at a different bakery across town, working the early shift. The owner, Margaret, had been in the business for decades, and she quickly became a mentor. She understood the pain of losing a dream. She had lost her first bakery to her ex-husband. People like your brother, she said one morning as we kneaded dough together. They think running a food business is just about numbers. They forget that every recipe, every customer, every tiny detail makes a difference. She was right. James saw the bakery as nothing more than a business opportunity, something to grow, scale, and turn into a money-making machine. He didn't understand that customers came for more than just coffee and pastries. They came for the experience, the personal touch, the quality that couldn't be mass-produced. By the 4-month mark, the cafe's reputation was crumbling. A local food blog that had once praised us as the best bakery in Boston now published a harsh review of the changes. Loyal customers began sharing their disappointment on social media. James' response? Hire a PR firm and hand out discount coupons, money poorly spent. At the 5-month point, suppliers began contacting me. Your brother's behind on payments, they said. Is everything all right? I made note of every call, every complaint, building my case bit by bit. Then, 6 months after James took over, my father showed up at my apartment. He looked older than I remembered, deep lines on his face. We need to talk, he said quietly. I let him in but didn't offer him anything. The last time I'd offered him anything, it had ended up in James' hands. The cafe's in trouble, he confessed, slumping into the couch. James has made some serious mistakes, the bank's threatening to foreclose. I stayed silent. We need your help, Anna. Customers keep asking for you. The staff is threatening to quit. Even your mother agrees we made a huge mistake. And James, I asked. Dad's face soured. He's already moved on. Says the market's not right, the location's wrong, all sorts of excuses. Now he's thinking about starting a cryptocurrency company. Of course he was. James never stayed around to deal with the messes he made. How bad is it? I asked, although I already had a pretty good idea. Really bad. We're 3 months behind on loan payments. Suppliers want cash up front. The health inspector issued violations last week. We're weeks away from closing permanently. I walked over to my desk and pulled out a thick folder. 6 months of detailed documentation. Photos, customer complaints, supplier issues, financial records, all carefully collected with help from my industry connections. This is how it's going to go, I said, sitting down across from him. You and Mom are going to sign over the business to me. No strings attached, no co-signing, no family involvement. I'll take over the debt, negotiate with the bank, and fix what James broke. And one more thing, I added, cutting him off. You're going to write a formal letter to every employee James fired, offering them their jobs back with back pay. And you'll take out a public notice in the local paper, acknowledging that pushing me out was a mistake. He stared at me, his daughter, the one he had always underestimated, and I could see the realization dawning on him. "You've been planning this," he said slowly. "Since the day you let James take my dream away," I replied. "Did you really think I'd just give up and walk away?" I asked. 2 weeks later, I stood in the cafe again. This time, it was truly mine, no strings attached. The papers were signed, the announcements made, the apologies issued. Maria was back in the kitchen, already working on our signature dishes. Lucy and the rest of the team were bringing back the vintage decor they carefully stored. A local food blog published a follow-up article, "Sweet Dreams returns to its roots." The original owner is back at the helm. Our old customers started returning, drawn by the fresh smell of baked goods and the promise of a true return to what made Sweet Dreams special. My mom visited on our first day back under my leadership. She stood nervously by the counter as I decorated a wedding cake, something James had considered too unprofitable to keep. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "We should have trusted you, should have seen what you were capable of." I finished piping a delicate sugar flower before responding. "Yes, you should have." "And James?" she asked. I thought about my brother, already moving on to his next scheme, leaving others to deal with the mess he left behind, as always. "James did me a favor," I said finally. "He showed me exactly how strong I am, how much I'm capable of, and he showed you exactly why you should have believed in me from the beginning." She nodded slowly and left. I returned to my cake, to my kitchen, to the dream I fought so hard to reclaim. A year later, Sweet Dreams was thriving once again. The loan was being paid off, our reputation had been restored, and then some. I even opened a small baking school next door, teaching others the skills I had worked tirelessly to master. James never returned to the cafe. Last I heard, his cryptocurrency venture had tanked, and he was now trying his hand at house flipping. But I kept the photos of his corporate makeover prominently displayed in my office, a reminder that sometimes you have to lose something to truly appreciate how much you'll fight to get it back. Yesterday, a young woman came in for a job interview. She had just graduated from culinary school and was full of passion for baking. "My brother says I'm wasting my time," she confessed nervously. "He says I should get a real job in business." I smiled, thinking of how far I'd come. "Let me tell you a story," I said, "about a baker who lost everything to her brother's business sense and how she got it all back, and more." Thanks for watching. See you next time, and stay amazed.